the Commission could conduct a credible election. The election suffered from a historically low turnout, including the absence of participation in some parts of the country. This denies the election a broad-based mandate. The opposition boycott, coupled with the effects of violence, particularly by security agents, meant the political environment was not supportive of a free, fair, and credible election. The refusal to obey the Supreme Court order to open the servers for scrutiny so as to determine what went wrong in August to avoid similar mistakes meant that there was a continuing violation of the law. The management of the electoral process, as well as the results transmission and announcement, did not conform to the requirements of the Constitution. It mirrored issues raised in the petition to the Supreme Court, which annulled the results of the August 8th presidential election, including results based on fair less than 100% of each constituency's polling stations. Evidence of multiple Form 34A from the same polling stations with different results. Changing numbers in the voter register. Forms 34B that are missing serial numbers. Forms 34B printed in non-standard formats. Notes and data missing from the handover and takeover sections. Pages missing from published Forms 34B.
Rather than using the historic Supreme Court judgment to reform and raise electoral standards, the 5-year cycle of electoral instability.
I'm shifting.
Yeah. Rather than using the historic Supreme Court judgment to reform and raise electoral standards, the 5-year cycle of electoral instability has been further entrenched. This is horribly costly in ways the nation cannot afford and continues to create uncertainty and fear. The country needs to draw a line on this and raise the bar for elections once and for all. We the people are concerned that a legal challenge is again probable, and far from resolving the failure of the August 8th election, it raises the prospect of yet another election being held within the 60 days as required by the Constitution, or at the very least an ongoing political crisis with a protracted legal contest. This means that Kenya is not only back where it started in August, but it is also faced with a deepening and dangerous national crisis. We the people reject this illegal election and also reject calls for another election in 90 days, as this would have to be managed by what now has become a completely discredited electoral management body. Furthermore, the prevailing atmosphere of fear and violence cannot support another election so soon after the last two. The country would need to heal before it can conduct another election. The country is an escalating crisis that has been exacerbated rather than resolved by last week's election. It has resulted in more disruption, death and violence. Kenya is in the grip of a massive security crisis marked by impunity in state institutions.
We the people note the failure by the international community to support democracy in Kenya. Do Kenyans not deserve the highest standards of democracy? There is a looming crisis of leadership, and the country needs instead a mechanism to reassert the sovereignty of the people. Who is in charge of the country as these problems are resolved? It is not clear whether the temporary incumbency arrangement is still in play. There are limits on how the IBC can be reformed with the diminished powers of the president during the temporary incumbency period. Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta lacks broad public legitimacy, and it is unclear how the opposition's resistance will impact his ability to effectively govern the country. We the people seek to institute a mechanism to manage a transition period within a year, in which we can properly reform the electoral management body and establish an agency that can genuinely deliver free, fair and credible elections, help reduce national tensions and divisions, and provide solace for victims and survivors. We the people call on the country to work together to find creative ways to resolve this crisis and heal the tensions and injuries inflicted on the nation.
Thank you so much, my colleagues. That is the end of the formal statement. We now open the floor to questions. We will take 3 at a time. Kindly identify. Actually, before we take the questions, I'm reminded that we have a graphic, a map of Kenya, to demonstrate some of our assertions and our analysis of last week's election based on voter turnout. And I'd like that to be projected on the screen so that we can see that and then proceed with the question and answer from there. Please.
Emphasize that we did that map and put it out on social media ourselves so that we take ownership of it.
Yes, this map was developed from analysis by Kurayangu Sautiangu, who had observers on the ground from both on August 8th but also on the 26th of October. And this is based on our analysis. The IBC has told us that the turnout of the election, this last election, was up around 38%. Though clearly there are questions about the methodology of reaching that percentage. But even if we take that for granted, this is how the map looks like graphically. The yellow parts shows parts of the country which had 50% and above voter turnout on the 26th of October. The blue part shows parts of the country that had under 50%. And in many of those places, it is generous to say under 50%. Parts of the country, polling didn't take place at all. So we are talking about a country that is clearly divided, and it's actually misleading to say it's divided down the middle, because this is not the middle of the country. This is a very tiny part of the country where people actually came out to vote. So that is a Kurayangu Sautiangu product. It's backed by figures. There are statements that we've been issuing that are in the public domain, but they can be availed, that show you how we reach this map. And there are other graphics that we've also developed to actually demonstrate what actually went on the ground last Thursday during the repeat election. Now we will take questions, and please identify yourself.